antique linen distress paint because that's going to be my color of my tag. And I'm going to apply some to my craft sheet. Because this paint is so fluid, I don't like to use it directly over this because it will seep underneath. But if that's the look you're going for, because you want it a little bit more grungy, there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to take a piece of blending foam and stick it on the blending tool. And now I can go in and pick up some paint. I also like to work with a blending tool because the foam is much thinner than, say, cut and dry foam. Cut and dry foam is thicker, so when you press it down, it tends to ooze more paint out. And this just makes it easy to control. I'm also going to be dabbing this on, so if you are an avid blending tool user, as I am, you really don't want to do that circular motion too much because you don't want to catch your stencil. So I'm just dabbing. Dab, dab, dab. In some areas I'm going over a couple times, others I'm just letting it fade in. So whatever you want. So again, I'm just building my layers and I'm looking, and notice that I'm not focusing on the same area. I'm going there, I'm going to another area, I might come back because that's going to allow my paint to dry in between layers, okay? Once you're happy with that, you can just lift that off and you can see that we've got some paint on there. Now paint on this, we can clean this off with a baby wipe, or you can just go in and you can spray with water. So here I'll just take a baby wipe, wipe that down, and that to me is clean enough. You know, I know I'm going to use it again, so I don't want to worry about making everything too crispy clean. So next I'm going to take another layer. Let's do some dots. We'll do the dot fade. Now, if you can see a little shimmer on there and you think you still have wet paint, then just dry it. Just use a heat tool. Distress paint, the fact that we use it really thin is going to dry that quick. And then I can take another stencil. Let's use something brighter. I'm going to go in with some broken china. Again, I'm back to distress paint. Same thing. Take that. And you'll also notice that the design of the stencils I did are really altered, really grungy. So they're not going to be perfect dots, not perfect shapes, but it's going to give me a really great, imperfect fade, which I like. Again, I'll clean that off. So right now I've got 2 layers of paint. That's what I've done. And I want to dry this. Just use a heat tool.
And one paint will never resist the other paint?
No, one paint will never resist it. You can layer them because they are the same product. So if we wanted the colors to blend, we would blend them while they're wet. But once they're dry, they're permanent. So you can layer right on top of it. Okay? Now because these are permanent though, other distress products will react with them. So if I went over this with stain, the paint's going to resist the stain. If I'm going over with an ink pad, same thing, it's going to resist the ink pad. So let's go in and we'll pick some colors and we'll start layering this with our distress pad. So I'm just going to take my blending tool, working from that outside in, circular motion, just start going over the top and you're going to see that your paint is going to resist our ink just as we start putting that over the top. And I'm just going to keep going around just with some different colors. Magic color, Wild Honey. Wild Honey just kind of electrifies everything. So here's what I want to point out as I'm blending this. Notice the blue dots. I did that in paint. If I were to do that in ink,
it would have blended.
Right, blue and yellow, there would have been green dots now. So that's another thing, and maybe that's what you want, which is fine. But I'm just saying, if you want to keep a true color when you're layering, anything that you do in paint is going to stay that true color. Going with a little bit of peacock feathers, blend that out. Very colorful. It won't stay this way, don't worry. There will be brown in my future. I can feel it. So at this point, if you like that look, it could be done. You could have that as a background. If you wanted to bring some of this color up, like for example, if you don't want some of that color to sit there, we can go over this with some water. I can still mist this on a cloth, and just using a damp cloth, I can go in and remove some of that ink. See that? And I can bring that color back up. So if I didn't want this to have that shade of distress ink, I can wipe over it. But I want to keep that on there because we're going to add another layer. So another layer, let's go in, let's do another layering stencil. Let's do something a little bit more open. So we'll use the honeycomb. Put that on top. Now for this, I want to mist. So for misting, I like to work with mini misters. Can you tell? So mini misters to me, they're just small, great little way that you can mist some stuff on there, and so I like that effect. these are downloadable labels on Ranger's website, just a 1/2-inch punch, and you can use them on your misters or your blending tools. But here's just 1 dropper full of re-inker that you would use for your ink pad, and the rest water. And what's nice about the mist is that it's going to do just that. It's just going to allow me just to create a mist effect. So I don't need to have so much spray on there, because I like to just use the mist for what that is, that mist pattern effect. And so when you lift that off, you can see the effect that you get. But yet I can still see all my colors underneath. And I know Diane would be cringing right now that I'm wiping that ink off and not smashing it somewhere else. I'm okay with that. We're all different. Okay, then I'm gonna dry that. But really, if you look at the pattern, that's the whole thing. You look at that pattern of what that mini mister does, that's what I really like about working with it. All right, we'll add one more layer. Let's add a little bit of a clock layer, and then we'll probably stamp on top of this. So here I want to go maybe a little darker. So maybe I'll take some gathered twigs. And for this, I'm going to use the blending tool kind of in a little twisting motion. You see that? Again, I don't necessarily want to do a circular motion because I don't want to catch the stencil, but I still want to blend it. So do that kind of quick turn, and I can see through my layers. In other words, I can see exactly what it is that I'm doing, so I can create that cool effect. And add that little clock layer. Pretty cool. Then I'm going to go in and just frame a little bit. So I'll take a little bit of black soot, add a little bit of color to the edges, not too much, so I don't have to go around the entire thing. And then we can go in with some stamps, which we will take right here because I have them. And now I'm going to stamp over the top. Because I want this to go over the paint and I want it to be permanent, I'm going to choose archival for this. I could stamp with distress, but remember, distress layered on paint could come off, so, yep. So just gonna stamp that with good pressure. There's our image on there. And maybe I wanna add a few little smaller images, so I'll swipe that. And just use that completely unmounted. And I can go in and just add some of that effect. Just taking some of that. Just want to get some background script in there. Nothing has to be too much. And there we go. And again, I'll switch that to true color so you can see the color in it.
And could the stencils be used with embossing dabber?
They can be used.
Make a resist with clear embossing
Absolutely.
powder?
They can be used with embossing dabbers. They can even be used with modeling paste, embossing paste. You can put that over there with a palette knife and you can lift it right up because they're durable enough. But that's what I like about stencils, layering stencils. It's not about taking one background and spraying over it. It's about saying, that's going to be a layer, the dots are a layer, that honeycomb pattern's a layer, the clock is a layer, and still stamp on top of it, or do rubs or whatever. So, layering stencils.